Hello and welcome to another episode of the All About the Balls Sports Podcast. We are a group of mates, some of whom you can hear coughing in the background. Christ, we lasted 10 seconds of vaguely professional there. But we are a group of mates who love nothing more than a good chat and a good beer and an argument about the sport. And joining me tonight, still in lockdown, in their respective places, but alive and kicking, we have Boise, Gareth, and Quizmaster Phil. Lads, how the devil are we?
Mate, I am back.
You're back
from the brink.
He's back.
I can't confirm it was the big C, so I've had COVID 17.5 because I haven't been tested. So until I've been tested, I can't go the full 19. But
we've had suspected Miley.
Yes,
suspected Miley.
The Miley Cyrus had an appearance in my bedroom. I wish. Is
that what you've told? You've told Liz you disappeared for 7 days.
You know, it was bad when someone said you've obviously completed porn, and I went, mate, that not even crossed my mind. 7 days. That's when you know it's serious. So, but yes, I'm good. I'm back. It's day 14 since the first symptoms. I'm feeling like properly back to normal tonight for the first time, which is good.
And strong.
Mate, that's good.
Yes.
He has risen again.
You look.
That's a rip.
You look great. I mean, you were saying before coming on air that you've, one of the upsides has been you've lost a bit of weight, and you're looking fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
very nice.
The Microsoft Teams reduces £10 apparently.
It does not.
Doesn't appear to on my screen, sadly. I think lockdown is having a very different issue with me.
One of the guys in the office today was like, should I go for a run, ride a bike, or barbecue and drink? I think I'll barbecue and drink tonight. So I was like, well, at least pretend you're going to do something. So, but Boise, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Nothing as exciting to report as you, but yeah, I'm all right. Just a bit boring, isn't it now? Getting a bit boring. It's
homeschooling.
Exactly. Well,
I've been on. Well, actually, I've been on. In terms of like getting boring, I've been on some proper deep YouTube rabbit holes. As you start like watching cricket highlights and rugby highlights and things like this, and you start going back in time further and further and further. Like, I'm watching some proper niche sporting highlights. I'm just desperate for any kind of sporting content. It's quite sad.
90s cricket's amazing, right?
You can't beat it.
It's just such good, like old school stuff. That it's just, and like you said, the rabbit hole you go down so quickly. You end up watching like a 2-minute clip on something, and then about 20 minutes later you're watching just Craig McDermott running and gets smacked over his head for 6 or something. Like, this is just phenomenal.
I watched the England 46 all out the other day against the West Indies. That was
talking about great sporting moments.
Yeah, that was magical. And you easy to forget that 46 all out, which obviously there was a lot of just Ambrose bowling everyone out, but the fact that England had a run out in the first over, having lost a wicket off the first ball, was just probably the most spectacular part of that. Ramprakash, I think, ran himself out, and England were 1 for 2 off 4 balls.
To be fair, that's a wise decision. He could see what was coming. He's the guy to go, look, Ambrose didn't get me out that day. So he got everyone else.
He's faced a couple of balls from Ambrose and gone, fuck this, I am
on a little bit of a tangent, which bowler do you think you would least like to have faced ever? Like, if you just pure brutalness, or you got 6 balls, you've got to face, who would you least like?
I've got 3 in my head. Ambrose is definitely one of them. Just pretty scary. and he's got long limbs, hasn't he, as well?
Yes.
Which,
it's the
which is
scariest,
really scary. Devon Malcolm, I always thought would have been really scary to face, just because he did spray it around a bit, didn't he? And
that's the worst.
You might get lucky in a six-baller, though. If you only got a face and over, he might not get one anywhere near you.
Yeah, but the one he does.
It's just as scary to be at third slip when facing Devon Malcolm. Like, you're like, I don't know if it could hit me in the shin.
Alan Donald?
Alan Donald, not so much. He had a nice action, didn't he? So I kind of, I'd feel more confident against him than Mitchell Johnson was the other one that I thought just an angry man, very slingy as well. And I didn't like the slingy actions and left armers. I didn't like left armers, if I'm honest.
Yeah, particularly Johnson in that series where they beat us 5-0.
Yeah,
Johnson in that series was unplayable.
Yeah,
which was weird, wasn't it? Because almost all the rest of the times he played England, he was utter shite, wasn't he? It was.
They just got in there. He got in their heads, didn't he? That series.
Village, who would you?
But I agree. It's someone like Kirtley. It's a big, tall, fast bowler. It's the bounce. Someone bowling quick but pitching it up kind of feels it's scary, but you're probably not going to die. So someone like Dale Steyn that's bowling 90-mile-an-hour away swingers, I'm okay. Or I'll probably fancy my chances of not dying, not hitting one, but not dying. But someone like Kirtley or Devon Malcolm, saying Mitchell Johnson. I mean, any of the really
Jofra Archer modern day, because he seems to just hit people I was watching cricket, like the World Cup highlights. He hit 3 people in the head in ODIs. There not that many people get in the ODIs at that.
No, that's true.
But he hit 3 at 11 games, 3 helmet incidents. It's like
I think that's the official measurement, isn't it?
Is that got his Wikipedia page?
Have you completed porn? No, but I've had 3 helmets.
Got 3 for 3.
You want to see a doctor about that?
So
is that with Archer? Is there something weird about his action then? Does he seem slower than he actually is? Like, is he like a slower run up or something? Because he must just catch people unaware.
I don't think they can pick. His action's quite nice. It's quite smooth.
It's just smooth, isn't it? It's just really smooth.
It's like a Rolls Royce with a very aggressive bouncer.
Yeah,
really pissed off.
That's what they say. I think his run up's quite relatively short, isn't it? It's not like a.
So they're not expecting him to let go of the ball yet?
Exactly,
It's like, hang on, where's...
Where did you come from?
Here's a Rolls-Royce question for you.
Yes.
Why did the Rolls-Royce Silver Mist not sell in Germany?
Don't know.
Is it something like, in German, Silver Mist is, I don't know, cum shot or something like that?
Silver turd. Silver turd. Not cum shot, no.
No, that was...
I forget my GCC German.
Yes. Dunker. So...
well played.
Thank you.
Actually, speaking of the cricket, I've been watching, I think as we all have, a lot of sport documentaries over the last few weeks. And I watched, I don't know if you guys have seen it, The Edge. I think Gavin recommended this for a while, actually. I watched The Edge on Amazon, actually, just today.
It's good.
Bloody hell. It's good. It's really good, but I didn't really read what it was about. I just thought it was about the England team kind of thing. And that first part where it's all about, okay, we're going to get to number 1. We're 7th in the world in Test cricket. We're going to get to number 1. And that story of getting there within 18 months. But then you see the disintegration of the team and of individual players like Trott, KP, Strauss. It's quite harrowing, actually. Yeah, Swanee. The way in which... I think it's... Towards the end, there's like some interviews with Andy Flower, and it very much looked like he's been sort of confronted with the question of, do you think that maybe you broke these guys, that actually you didn't care about the individuals, you just cared about winning, and as a result you've broken some humans?
Okay, so what do you think that's acceptable?
Yeah.
And I don't mean this in a weird way, but do you think that should be it doesn't... it's actually relevant with the collateral damage. It's the guys who come through and whatever, but actually it's a team collective, and they got to where they wanted to be. So sure, they've got PTSD, but it's
yeah. I mean, they can't pick up a cricket bat. But actually, I hear Boyce and Phil's views on this, but there is exactly that comment from Matt Pryor towards the end where he says something like that. It's like life as a professional sports person doesn't align with being a good person, because it's at the end of the day, sport is all about winning, and particularly at that level. It's not at all about you as an individual, your health, your well-being, your happiness, and nothing like that. It's about winning above all else. And Matt Price is like, it does reach a point where you can't do that anymore. It just breaks you, absolutely breaks you, because human psyche can't handle that for too long.
Well, Phil and I we were talking about this because I've only seen it recently as well, and we were saying exactly that. But I think it's more that it's in the not public eye, but it's more well known now. And I know that it's not just that team getting to number one. There's been previous England players, across nations, but specifically in the England cricket team. Simon Jones was speaking about the mental side of it, and a lot of his was injuries. Trescothick as well, but I think it's.
What was Trescothick's down to? Was he?
I think it was depression, wasn't it?
I don't know. I thought something was going on with
I think that was
allegedly. Was it? And he was touring the world, and other people were doing other things. Is that true?
He was leg before.
Allegedly,
I
sorry.
heard the rumor, but I think it was just that. I think it was.
He's a nice guy, isn't he?
He was the original one that brought it up in his book, wasn't he? And started speaking about it. So. But I think it's just more prevalent. And I know I think Andy Flower was, he was tough and he had a tough regime. But I also think he admitted that he maybe should have been more aware of the mental side and the mental impact. But I don't think it was necessarily down to him. He had a group of players there that all bought into it. And I think it is just the mental side of the game of getting to the top, and also the intensity of it. They were travelling around the world for 8 or 9 months of the year, and that's got to take its toll on it. So I think it's a really interesting docu movie, is it?
Yeah,
they call it,
it's good. It's good.
I think you're seeing it not just in cricket, you see it across a lot of sports now. And, British Olympic and Paralympic sport has been in the spotlight in the last 3 or 4 years for exactly the same reason, around the mental health and that winning at all costs. And I think it will turn out that the future is going to be balancing winning with maintaining mental health within athletes and staff within sports, and I think that's the future, because I think people are more comfortable talking about mental health these days, and I think part of the reason that some of these things have been allowed to happen, and the England cricket team is a good example. Ian and I were talking about go back into the 90s and the likes of Hick and Ramprakash and probably others that didn't even get into the England team because of what would have maybe been deemed a mental fragility. And actually now it's not about just who's the most alpha and saying, I can take it, I can do it. It's actually about trying to work with people so that you can create an environment that people are trying to compete in, trying to work in, that actually allows for people who have, they're obviously it's elite sport. You're going to have a tough mental edge, but that if you have those dips or those incidents where your mental health is affected, that you don't either A, have to hide it, or B, are immediately removed from the team because it's seen as a sign of weakness. People don't do it with physical injuries. There's a lot of work, I think, still to be done around mental health and probably how quickly people can return to the top when their mental health suffers. But I think the future of a lot of sport is finding that balance, because it's not acceptable anymore to just treat people like they're commodities, and it is winning at all costs.
It's interesting because the culture you'll see, it's going to be interesting to see harbouring and creating a culture where people are safe and can thrive versus the fear to driving someone on. And then you look at football as an example, and Liverpool strike me. I know it's easier because they're winning, but they do strike me. Your club strikes me as a player, as a manager that would nurture someone's mental thought process and that piece, as well as being a football person. Whereas then you look at Mourinho, who struggles with that piece, especially with the younger players, to get them to be able to be, inverted commas, happy and comfortable in their own skin and doing stuff. And you can see the massive difference in results, just in the difference of culture and generations coming through.
Do you think, and this is maybe just me being a bit lazy, but there's kind of this assumption in my mind that people view it as, if you want to achieve the best results, like the best records, the best performance levels, you have to sacrifice your mental well-being for that. So that whilst I agree with you, Phil, that actually there is going to be that trend towards finding a balance. In my mind, there's an assumption that connected with that, people are going, yeah, that's a good thing, but it means that actually the performances, whether it be the times or the number of goals scored or runs scored or whatever, the performances won't be as good, but people will be in a better place. But I'm not entirely sure that's right. I think actually, you can make a really good argument that if the individual and the group of people are in a better place, they can actually achieve more. And maybe achieve more over a longer period of time, or it's more sustainable or whatever. But
yeah, that's the point. I think sustainability will be the key, won't it?
And I think that's the challenge, isn't it? That's the challenge for people, is to find that balance and see if actually, there is this sort of assumption at the moment that actually, as you say, making sacrifices and pushing to the absolute limit, whether that's physically, mentally, whatever it might be, is what is going to achieve the best results. But everything evolves over time in terms of what it is that actually gets the best results, and in the world that we live in today, and the way in which people live, and the fact that mental health is something that is talked about far more openly, and that people feel that they have a responsibility to look after. Actually, that may be just the drive you need to find that actually, as you say, performances could either improve or have more longevity at a higher level, if you can find that balance.
Can I just say, never let it be said that this podcast is not completely diverse. We've just had a very serious conversation about mental health, and it is serious. But 2.5 weeks ago, we had 27 minutes of shouting cock and ball. So if anyone ever challenges our journalistic ability from one spectrum to the other, they can listen to those 2 episodes and we can show them what we made of.
That's progress.
I'm pretty sure I know what the people want.
I'm not sure that 20 minutes is going to save us from the previous archive Anyway, yes, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right that we have got some very, very fun things ahead of us in this episode. We've got a couple of things that we wanted to do today. This continues to be No Live Sport, although I do think, is it the Burundi or the Belarus Premier League continues?
I think both are actually still going, Ollie.
Yes.
Top quality.
And I think there's a couple of other leagues that are starting to potentially come back. So,
I think the German league's gone back into training.
Yes, they have, yeah.
So not far away.
So, no. Well, and maybe the hotel plan is happening.
Holiday inns around the country are preparing for the top Premier League players.
I actually had to think about that afterwards, Gareth, and
yes,
and I'm coming around to the idea.
Don't you flirt with me.
he's not a well man. He's been in isolation for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I need a confidence boost to coming back in, but he's just lobbed one outside off stump, and he made me happy. So thank you.
But
I mean, it's still ridiculous. It's still ridiculous.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But we have in this episode another fantastic quiz from our quizmaster Phil. This one is going to be on rugby. But before we get back into the rhythm of the show, where we demonstrate how little we actually know factually about sport, we wanted to do a little bit of a chat around some of our favourite sporting memories and moments from down the years. Because again, it's almost like sort of New Year's at the moment, where there's just lots of review and highlight shows on TV and things like that, as Sky Sports try to justify their subscription fees. But it does mean that we should reminisce a little bit and get nostalgic. So, lads, have you been thinking long and hard? I mean, Gareth, you've had nothing but time to think, mate. But
Yeah.
have you guys been thinking, like, what are those favourite sporting memories?
Well,
that
I'd like to
still make you smile or cry or tense up in an inappropriate manner.
I'd like to start with and it's a very obvious one, but obviously on Sunday, Easter Sunday, they redid the whole World Cup final, right, start to finish, coverage, adverts included, which was great, but the best part for that whole thing on Sunday for me was my nephew's over from South Africa, and he knew the result but didn't know any detail. So to the point he didn't even know there was a Super Over. So it was phenomenal watching Stokes hit a 6 and then do the old 6 overthrows thing, and him just be like, this is just insane. Well, I ended up getting wrapped up in it again and still sat there nervous, which was bizarre.
Well, on that, I didn't watch the World Cup final, but I followed the commentary and watched the Sky Sports coverage of the Headingley Test.
Yes.
Certainly the fourth day, and just remembering how great that day was and how good the commentary was for that last hour especially was amazing. But just the whole day and how tense it was, and the night before, absolutely brilliant. And Sky did it brilliantly, because they had the players coming on and explaining some of the background that was going on and the thoughts in the dressing room while it was all going on. And for the final hour, they had Root and Stokes commentating it through, which was just brilliant, absolutely.
Yeah, that is
brilliant.
Awesome.
And when Stokes did that reverse sweep for 6 off Lyon, which Root was just laughing and going. Apparently, Butler said, "This guy's a freak," just when he did it, and but it was just immense.
It is.
It's incredible. It was really incredible about those two things. Aside from the fact that it was Stokes both times that was in the middle of it, but it was 2 formats of the game, and they were about 2 months apart, and it was 2 of the most incredible days cricket you can imagine. It was, both of them felt individually like once in a lifetime things that you were watching, but especially the second one, this is once in a lifetime, but I feel like it's a repeat from, a couple of months ago. And it was just extraordinary. And it almost feels wrong, because I was thinking the same thing. You talk about greatest sporting moments, and both of those 2 things came to mind immediately. And it almost felt wrong to say, oh, they happened 6 months ago, or in the last year. That can't be the greatest thing. But, when we're doing this in 30 years' time, still in lockdown. If we're still in lockdown, they'll still be the greatest things, because there won't have been any more sport. But even if there's 30 years more sport, you'll be talking about those 2 days in the summer of 2019. They'll only get better as time goes on, and and because certainly with a test, it's something like that doesn't happen, and it won't happen again for 10, 15, 20 years.
Potentially
like
ever. In that context I don't know. That could never happen again.
It's the context of it that makes it so amazing.
Because it wasn't just that innings. It was the fact that it was against Australia. It was the fact that that was the game that then tied the series back up. So like it was all of those. If he'd done that heading one, if he'd done that against India or New Zealand, it still would have been an amazing innings, but it wouldn't have been the same.
I agree. I think the only thing that counts against it, and for me puts the World Cup just that slight edge above, is that we didn't go on to win the Ashes.
Yes.
And it's just, it's just that little thing in the back of your mind that the thing about the World Cup was it was something we'd never done before. We'd never been any good at one-day cricket. We went in as the favourites. We had that little wobble, and then we came through and won it in the most extraordinary fashion.
So
there's only one name on the trophy, Ian. There's only one name on the trophy.
In the same vein, where do people rate then England's Rugby World Cup win in 2003? Because for me, that the actual finals on my birthday as well, so it was a really great day all round. But it was a fantastic occasion.
Well, actually, it was the day I landed. It was the day I landed in this country. It's the day I moved over.
No way.
So I very quickly switched allegiances. Did not even have time to have a shower, and I was already supporting England. Already glory hunting.
I completely agree. Amazing game, but I think it was the journey of the team that their development, and you said about that you recently watched the Edge. I'm sure I've seen it before, but Building Jerusalem? Which is also on Amazon Prime. Yeah, really good, and similar thing to what Flower said, that Woodward came in and England, I can't remember where, I think they were 5th or 6th in the world, and it was that building that team to become the number one team in the world, and that was what they did, and the processes they went through, and I didn't realise there was so much rugby politics involved in that team, and to the point that the players actually went on strike at one point, which are completely forgotten. But
that's a good point.
So yes, the match was brilliant, but it's that culmination and how they built that team that I think makes it really
again,
impressive.
like you say, it's the scenario, isn't it? Like the build
I think in both of those cases, England cricket last year and the rugby in 2003, you're looking at a team that had, as you said, built over time and become number one, and were expected to win. And so that somehow that ramps up the pressure, doesn't it? Because even if you think back to the Rugby World Cup last year, most England fans would have said semi-finals. Hopefully we can win it, but semi-finals, especially, we're going to end up. We've ended up against New Zealand. Semi-final. Obviously, having beaten New Zealand, everyone wanted to win it, but it didn't feel like you were sort of quite at that same point. Whereas in 2003, it just felt like anything but winning it would have been a massive failure. And the same with the cricket guys in 2019, having got to the peak, clearly being the best team.
Yeah.
If you don't win it, you kind of just feel that would have fallen off the edge of the cliff, and there was just something special about that team that's got to the point of built to the point of going, this is the aim, this is what we want to win, and then actually getting there. Yeah.
I think that's what makes these great sporting moments, if there is that backstory and development rather than just that individual moment in isolation. I think it's really impressive.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting.
Go on, Phil.
Sorry, I was going to say it'd be really interesting to know how that compares, as you know, they're England's wins, right, across the major sports. But someone like your European football winners, so your Denmark in '92 or your Greece in 2004. How does that feel as a fan to be just the so unexpected? I don't know whether that makes it feel better or worse, or not worse, but how does that compare? And I guess we haven't had that. That would have been your 2007 England Rugby World Cup win if they'd got over the line, because that was a team that was going nowhere, doing nothing. And
what was the opening group game was 50-0, wasn't it? Was it 50-0? Yeah. So and
then to lose in the final due to being robbed by a terrible touch press decision. To be that close.
The South African Rugby World Cup win, how expected was that?
95?
No, last year.
Well, I mean, probably 30 months before that, they had Alistair Coetzee. We were in absolute shambles. Exactly. And Rassie Erasmus was director of rugby, and they basically he was doing two jobs during the whole period. He was director of rugby for the whole of SAFU and the head coach. And probably the water boy, and probably doing everything else, physio. But yeah, so from that perspective, it wasn't expected at all. I mean, look, they built a side, and it became, and there was a lot of chat that if certain players stayed fit, we had a much better chance. But I think even in the final, we were the underdogs in terms of, which
I think, like if you look in that opening round of matches when they got beaten, not easily, but relatively straightforwardly by the All Blacks, you did get that feeling of like, look, South Africa are good, but they're not going to
win it
with like the likes of New Zealand. New Zealand on their day will still be able to beat them. You'd fancy England against South Africa in most situations, if England are on good form. And then when England did beat New Zealand in that semi-final, the way they beat them, you're like, oh, Christ. I mean, if England come anywhere near that kind of performance again, South Africa are going to get blown off the park. And that just did not happen.
But I think like 95 World Cup was special for me.
Yeah.
And I remember it so vividly how, because it was in SA, I was only 12. Like it was a time like everyone just went mental, and it was, again, weirdly, we had a very good side, but we'd been in isolation for years. We'd only been back in the game for 3 years in international rugby. So to win it and to beat the All Blacks with John Olomu and the likes was, as a country and from many different facets, was just insanely good. So
how did it actually? I mean, do you know what? Because it is an iconic moment in sport. Like, how did it feel seeing in that final, seeing Matt Damon shake hands with Morgan Freeman?
I mean, that's Matt Damon.
That's your worst Mandela impression ever.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I think they nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. It is funny that if that film Invictus is hilarious, because the way they make it like there's going to be some terror attack with the aeroplane that flies over. And that was completely made up for the movie. There was never even a plot line in real life. No one thought there was a terror attack. And they just, exactly. Matt Damon just almost morphed into taking Freeman out and running off. But yeah, it was an amazing moment. Actually, it was quite special. I remember where I was and what was going on. It was a very special moment in SA. It was mental. So
yeah. So look, those are some of the big international ones. Then I've got was noting down some before the show. There are two, and I know this is going to pain Gareth quite a lot, but the two Liverpool Champions League performances, was it the final in 2005? That comeback, 3-0 down against the favourites, that is insane. And then the semi-final last year, that too was pretty incredible. But is it something? If it's a club, can it only? If it's like fewer people can feel that that's their special moment, kind of thing. Like at a national level, the whole country can get behind it. Whereas, is it harder for?
incredible moments, but I don't think they pull people together. And I'm no Gareth apologist, but are either of those even the greatest Champions League comeback?
100% not. I mean, the penalty shootout in 07, the penalty shootout in 07 was much better. Which actually, Village, you were with me at my flat in London.
I was in your flat. Yeah,
I was a wreck. But look, no, 99, mate. He's going to top trumps any Champions League moment for me. And again, talking about the season and the moments that happened, the FA. It was on this day Ryan Giggs scored that absolute worldie semi-final goal in the FA Cup. It was on this day today in 99. But what I was going to ask was, what was the feeling when United went through that? Did people care? Or was it only United fans who were going mental, if that makes sense? Or was it because you'd gone and won, they'd beaten Juventus, who were ridiculous at the time, and then they'd gone and beaten Bayern Munich and stuff? Was there any feeling, or was it just like, this is just a good game of football?
Couldn't give a monkeys.
Was it a good game? I don't remember whether it was like a end-to-end game that was really great. I mean, it was good in the last 2 minutes, but it probably affected less people. But I saw Palace-Watford when Palace were 1-0 down and they scored 2 in the last few minutes, and it was very exciting. So, I mean...
Well, I think that galvanised South London. Incredible. I mean,
there's a different question for a different day, though. Does a great game have to be great all the way through, or is it just the moments that make you remember it as great? Because I agree. I watched that Liverpool, the Man United Bayern game, and I remember the last 2 minutes of it as clear as day. I can't remember any of the previous 90 minutes. Apologies, Gareth, but that's an amazing moment. Actually, the Cricket World Cup final bits of it weren't a great one-day game.
No, it was very stodgy for periods.
240 plays 240 on a grey and overcast day isn't what you think of as being sometimes lower scoring games.
255 plays 255. I think it was.
All right, not the quiz. But it was the greatest game because of a number of moments that happened through it, and again, the Rugby World Cup final in 2003 wasn't necessarily the greatest game of rugby. It was great because it was close throughout, and both teams had those moments. So,
can I just bring us back to cricket, because I'm sure we're running low on time, but my greatest sporting moment has to be Oval Test 2005 specifically. And I don't like him and I continue to hate him, but Peterson's innings was amazing, and not just because of necessarily that. I mean, 150 in an Ashes series is amazing.
158. It's not the quiz, but
Google it. But
no, it's 158. Don't worry.
But the context of the innings, and I know Phil was there. We were both there for that day, and what is easily forgotten is Brett Lee was bowling possibly one of the best spells of bowling you'll see. He was so quick, and England were in pieces going into lunch, and I think they were 4 down at lunch.
I think it might have been 5, was it?
Might have been 5 actually, but and if they'd continued losing wickets, then Australia would have batted again and would have not needed many, and they would have won the series or drawn the series. Yeah. So
it was sort of half an hour, 40 minutes after lunch, wasn't it, when Lee came in and just really bowled at Peterson's head, and he just kept going after him and kept hitting him into the stands, and it was just the most. It was such a a sort of weird mixture of feelings, because it was genuinely thrilling cricket, but it was also every ball felt terrifying because he was, whilst he kept hitting him for six, he wasn't hitting him 30 rows back. He was, it was to go back again to our favourite 2019 Headingley, and it's six or out. Oh, it's six, and it's just the ball was sort of dropping over people's heads, and it was genuinely thrilling. And I just remember thinking, England were at some point had got to about 300 ahead with a maximum of 28 overs left. And we were there going, well, it's only 10 and over. If they do bowl us out now, they could just come out and smash 10 and over. It would never happen. But we were genuinely terrified. And I think it was one of my favourite ever sporting moments. That was, Ian and I played cricket with an old boy whose job was the dressing room attendant at the Oval. And we were sat just below the dressing rooms, and at lunch, when they were, whatever they were, 90 for 5 or 100 for 5, and they only had a 10-run lead or something, so it was basically 100 for 5, and we were all sat there going, God, this is awful. This is absolutely awful. After all of this, we're going to lose the Ashes, aren't we? And then suddenly we turned around, looked up, and this guy, Ricky, was stood on the balcony, and we just started nudging each other. We went, let's go and talk to Rick, because this is professional sportsmen. And they'll tell it, we can go and just make ourselves feel better, because they must be sat there going, don't worry, this is everything we've worked towards. This is how we're going to play. It's going to be okay. So we walked up and went, Rick, it's us. And he was like, hello, boys. He was like, yeah, what's going on? Are they feeling all right in there? And he went, no, they're shitting themselves. I think they've lost. And I guess that whole thing, and this whole conversation's gone full circle, but the conversation we had around mental health as well, the fact that we were all sat there just as fans going, oh, God, we've cocked this up. But you think, no, these professional sportsmen are going to be in there going, no, we've got our plans and we've got what we've worked and we know what we've got to do. And they weren't, I think. They were all just sat in there going, we have cocked this up. And then Peterson went out and just played the most extraordinary innings that just, I guess, defined him for the rest of his career. He played some unbelievable innings for England before it all went sour, but nothing, I don't think, defined him more than that afternoon.
And I don't think anyone else in that dressing room believed by him, and he was because he was so bullheadedly arrogant that he actually. That I think anyone else who was, even the batsman who was left, if that makes sense, would have really struggled with the pressure. But to say that he's so bloody arrogant and just thought, I'm just going to take it to you, and I'm going to either die trying or I will win the battle.
Well, don't forget, before lunch, Warne dropped him at slip.
A really easy drop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that,
Warne took
no slip catches easy, I'll tell you that much.
Warne took 40 wickets in that Ashes. Don't Google it, correct. Did more than anyone else to sort of rage against the burning ship that was England, just managing to turn this round after 17, 18 years. And yet it was, and I guess that's sport for you, isn't it? That guy has just been at a level above everyone else. He's taken 40 wickets. He almost won them the Edgbaston Test, which again, is almost unreal that we haven't mentioned that in this. That I just, again, that the range of emotions that I went through on that Sunday morning when we had them 8 down with 100 to win, and you just thought, this is, 20 minutes in the morning, we're going to wrap this up, we're back in the Ashes, and suddenly, again, you just get taken on that roller coaster from, Christ, actually, we're not going to win this. This is everything all over again. And again, that was that thing of, we got a team in 2005 that was on the up. They were a team that had gone from, we expected to challenge in that Ashes. We expected to that was our opportunity to win them, because they'd gone on that journey for the previous 2 years of becoming just a team that could compete against one of the greatest teams that's ever existed.
So, and this is the last question on this, because we've got to get into our quiz. But something you both just said there, Boycie and Phil, that you were actually at that Oval Test. Does that make a big difference between a good sporting moment and your truly best sporting moments, if you're actually there live at the game?
I think it helps, but
I wasn't at Headingley or at the World Cup final.
Yeah,
And they were great. I think it's more the impact, the wider impact it has on the general public, the wider sporting world. If it's that great, then it's memorable across countries and across sports rather than anything else. And all other sports were talking about the World Cup final, talking about the Ashes series, and talking about the Rugby World Cup final win. It kind of bridges that gap.
I agree. I think for your personal feeling, it lends something different to it. Like, being there does give you a different perspective, but I can remember exactly where I was and what I was doing in 2003 when we won the World Cup. And I'll remember in 30 years, I'll remember the cushion that I was punching when Stokes was trying to get us across the line in the World Cup, and the look on my kids' faces because they'd never seen anything quite like it. You know, the range of emotions that a human being was going through, or where that I was driving through France when during Headingley, couldn't get it on the radio, and my wife, who doesn't know anything about cricket, she's just looking at the BBC app and just reading the number of, every 5 minutes, just reading the number of runs to win. And so I didn't know any of the context, I didn't know any of the stories. And then after we won, Ian rang me and he went, "Have you seen it? We won." I said, "Yeah, Sophie told me it's brilliant." He went, "But do you know what happened?" I was like, "No." And I've now watched it so many times. I feel like I have watched it, and I watched it again on Saturday or Sunday over the weekend, and I listened to the, like Ian said, I listened to the TMS commentary for the first time, and because I've watched the Sky commentary so many times, I'm watching it back, and it's those moments that just stick with you forever, I think.
So I don't think we've actually come up with an answer to the greatest sporting moment, but that was actually really enjoyable just to hear everybody get a bit passionate about their favourite memories.
I think the real winner is cricket, isn't it? The good ones. Maybe we're biased, but because of the group we've got. But when you think the real moments, there's good stuff in other things, but nothing takes you over a day of journey. I think that's why, or a series or whatever.
I'll be controversial. I couldn't think of any football ones. So,
I mean, I was between those four amazing cricket ones and that time Palace scored 2 in the last minute against Watford. So they were it for me.
Hi, it's Ollie here from the show. Sorry to interrupt your listening pleasure, but just wanted to say that we decided to split this show into 2 different episodes. The episode you've just heard, where we rambled on about mental health in sport and great sporting memories, and then our rugby quiz hosted by Quizmaster Phil. We split it in 2 because in the end the one show ended up lasting for about an hour and a half, and we thought whilst you were all lovely dedicated listeners, that was perhaps a little bit too much for one show. So thank you for listening to this first part. We'll end here, and then tomorrow we will be publishing our rugby quiz with Phil. Cheers, go well.